Hedera Hashgraph HBAR is governed and ran by some of the largest institutions in the world. And this is something that many people are still largely unaware of. What I want to do is put a video out there to explain what the governing council is, who's involved with it, and what their role is in regards to Hedera, and sort of clear up a lot of the criticism that gets levied at Hedera for having chosen to initially start off with a governing council that each have a responsibility to run nodes, to maintain and operate the network in a similar fashion to what Bitcoin miners do, or stake pools for Ethereum, validators. Hedera Hashgraph has taken the decision to make these some of the largest institutions in the world that all, as a part of them actually signing up to Hedera, have to actively be looking at a use case that involves, of course, the hash graph. So people criticize this, but we're going to be showing you that actually you shouldn't be criticizing this. This is a strength. Many blockchains out there only wish that they had some of the names that Hedera actually has running its network. And we're going to be exploring it all in this video. And I just want to absolutely stress this point, but we'll cover it a little bit later on. There is a path where you're going to have public nodes, which is going to see people like me and you be able to run nodes to run the network. But it started off with some of the largest institutions in the world. There's a number of real advantages there. One is it's entirely trackable. So you can see who's validated what, who, the origins of the network and who's partaken in it are kind of logged in a manner where most actually aren't. This can be very useful for regulations and things like this. But let's get into it all. And let's just start things off by actually introducing the governing council for Hedera. So we're going to bring up the governing council. So this is Hedera's governing council. And right now, there are 32 members that make up the governing council. And some of these members are some of the largest in the world. We can see EDF over here. In fact, let's just read down the list. So we've got Aberdeen, the UK's largest hedge fund. We've got Australian Payment Plus. We've got Avery Dennison. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. BitGo, who is invested in by JP Morgan. Of course, we've got Boeing, Chainlinks Labs, DBS, Cofra, Dell. Dell are doing some really interesting things involving Hedera. We've got Dentons, Deutsche Telekom, DLA Piper, that have Toko and a number of other things. EDF, which are, of course, the largest renewable energy supplier in Europe. We've got Google. I'm sure we're all very familiar with who Google are. Hitachi, IBM, I'm sure we're all familiar with. IIT, Mandras. We've got LG, LSE, Magalu, Noora, Mondelez, which of course are the people behind Cadbury's, Toblerone, many of your favorite chocolate bars and snacks out there. We've got Service Now. We've got Sinhan Bank, Standard Bank, Swirlds, of course, the people that are behind the hash graph. Tata Communications, Ubisoft, massive gaming company, some of the best games that have came out on platforms like Xbox and PS5 or 4 or the PS consoles have come straight out of Ubisoft, and of course Computer. UCL, Wipro, WorldPay, and Zane. And all of these governing council members, or a lot of them, are across the globe. The only continent that doesn't have a Hedera governing council member that is running node hardware to actually help validate the network and governing it from their geographical position, the only continent that actually doesn't have a governing council member is Antarctica. And I'm sure one day we will get there. In fact, I'd really like to see that governing council member be added. So this is a monster lineup. All of these individuals are actively having to look for a use case that uses Hedera, whether it be Aberdeen with their tokenization of their money market fund. Also, Aberdeen very close with BlackRock. We did have news that BlackRock's ICS fund was now being tokenized on Hedera. You've got the likes of what Dell are doing in regards to looking to implement it in their technology. You have the likes of EDF, which are actively looking to use it for tokenized carbon credits and to sort of tackle the renewable energy market with Hedera, and so on and so forth. There's so much going on with Hedera's governing council. So what is the role of the governing council? Well, the role of the governing council is quite self-explanatory, is to govern the network, to make decisions. One of the decisions that they made that had a lot of pushback was the staking. So to lower the staking rewards down to around 2% from what it previously was. And they basically get together and they publish minutes every single meeting, which is a very transparent way of doing things, where they can essentially show what has been discussed, what's been spoke about, and what direction they want to take the Hedera network in. And when we talk about institutional adoption, who better to steer Hedera towards institutional adoption than some of the largest institutions in the world? So their job is not only to govern the Hedera distributed ledger, but it is also to maintain it. Now, they play the same role as Bitcoin miners or Ethereum stake pools do, or whatever other proof of stake consensus mechanism that uses stake pools, where you give your stake, you nominate your stake, or you delegate your stake to a stake pool, and then they have the task of basically validating the network. This is the other job that the governing council actually play. They also play a role in promoting Hedera to other institutions, and it often puts people's minds at ease when they see the lineup that you have on the governing council associated with a distributed ledger, when there's been this kind of dark cloud or grey area cast over it with all the sort of fraud and things like this that we've seen. They also play the role of being the validators of the network, and I think they all have to run 2 nodes each. There can, out of these 32 individuals, only be 2 nodes on one hardware service, so Amazon Web Services, for example. This is very different and is actually, you could argue, a more decentralized point of view than many of the other blockchains out there, like Ethereum, which actually has a very large, I think it's 30% or something, is run on Amazon Web Services. And most distributed ledgers out there actually go to institutions, and the lion's share is with institutions to leverage their hardware to actually facilitate the blockchain. A lot of these blockchains are software, and they need hardware to essentially enable them. And often that's that kind of link back to centralization. So there's a massive hypocrisy when people throw shade at Hedera for this. And actually, from a hardware point of view, Hedera is probably far more decentralized than many out there in regards to not having, 32 members. They can only have 2. That means there's a very small percent use the same hardware. So if there was ever issues, it's a lot more decentralized out there. And also geographically, we find a lot of concentration for the likes of Bitcoin miners and also Ethereum and other networks that are very centralized in certain places. So there's a lot of arguments to be made that in many regards, Hedera is far more decentralized, certainly from a node point of view, than many other networks out there. Now, the argument is, of course, and it's a valid one, that there's less nodes and there's less people partaking. And I'm not going to dispute that. But actually, even with less people partaking, you do see in some networks a real centralization. And this is natural. You could divide all the world's wealth up between everybody, and within a day, someone would have more than somebody else. And this is kind of how a lot of these proof of stake mining sort of operations go. You end up with big players, whales, that can essentially dictate the governance, have an unfair sway on it, and also control the lion's share of the actual consensus mechanism and the state that operates it. Whereas Hedera is far more decentralized in a number of different ways. Now, I also want to add that there is a clear path to public decentralization. Hedera has just taken the approach of actually starting with these big companies and then actually moving towards public nodes down the line. I think it's a massive strength. We'll just show the governing council once again that Hedera has chosen this. I think when you look at Hedera, it's such a well thought out project from all angles. This is just another one of them. And actually, you can argue a lot of things as a result of this. What I want to do now, guys, is because I've rambled on for long enough, and I think I've given a good sort of basic overview of things, is actually play a clip of Lehman Baird that I managed to dig out from around about 2 years ago, and him giving his response to people that levy criticism against Hedera. And then we will wrap the video up. So let's dive into that clip.
Lehman, what do you say to people who have expressed concern or distaste for Hedera's perceived centralization based on the large corporations that make up the governing council?
No, this is more decentralized than the governance. Let's talk about governance. So, you can say down with big companies, I don't trust big companies. Guess what? I also do not trust a big company. I do not trust it to do the right thing. You know what else? I also don't trust a stranger that I've never met to do the right thing, who's an individual. I just don't trust anybody. And I think this is the important thing. What do you do in a world where you don't trust anybody? Well, you don't let one somebody control everything. You decentralize it. You have to have a bunch of them. So what I want to do is I want to have this governed by people who are in different countries under different governments, who are on different continents, and that I know who they are, and I know they care about their reputation, and I know that they are hard to bribe because they're a Fortune 500 company. They're one of the top 10 universities in the world. This is what I want, but not just that. I don't just want to be decentralized that way and decentralized in time where they have term limits. What I want is for transparency as well. So I want to know something about the people running something. I want there to be more than one person. I want there to be a lot of them. We have 21 council members right now on every continent on the globe except Antarctica. Maybe we'll even get that. We have diverse interests among our council members. If you were to pick just one council member, do I trust them? No, I don't trust any stranger, but I know who they are. I know they've been around for a while. They're probably not going to do incredibly stupid things. They're probably going to act in their own interest, which is why I don't trust them. If I meet some random stranger, well, I don't trust them either. What I would like is to be able to see how they do their deliberations. And so what we do is we publish all the minutes of all the meetings of the council. And so you can see who are the council members from all around the world with different interests. They're in different industries, they're different backgrounds. There's companies and schools, universities, different kinds of things, but you know who they are. You can read the minutes, you can see how they're discussing it. What I would feel a lot less comfortable with is if a dozen guys in China controlled all the hashing power and made the real decisions, or if everyone holding a coin has one vote and the whales, who I don't even know who they are, who hold all the coins and pull the strings from behind the scenes, are controlling it. I would be very uneasy with that because I don't get minutes from every time they meet and discuss these things. And I don't know who they are, and they don't necessarily have a reputation that they're really interested in protecting. If you give them $1 million, maybe they're willing to lose their reputation. This is not as good decentralized governance. It's really centralization. You can say, hey, anyone on earth can contribute to our code base, but what ends up happening over time for most systems is that you end up with a handful of people with the power. This is every system ends up that way, or one person with the power. Every system ends up with that. So what you do is you say, we want checks and balances. We want this group that is controlling it to be a group that is known, that is decentralized, meaning around the world under different governments, in case governments try to intervene, that are publishing their minutes of what they're doing, that are big enough that it's hard to bribe them. This is what you want for true transparency of governance. And I think this is incredibly important. And you've got to bake it in at the ground level when you first build your system. It becomes very hard to retroactively add good governance like this, trustworthy governance. That's what's important.
So I really wanted to make this video just to get it out there because I always get the comment, well, you know, Hedera is centralized, blah, blah, blah. And the simple and truthful answer is no, it is not. And it's also very interesting. I got into it. I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. I find it hard to believe the Satoshi story. And I find to believe that there's way too many coincidences. And when there's way too many coincidences, you tend to find the same people that have been behind things throughout history. I'm not going to call them out. Essentially manipulating things. And Bitcoin and the narrative is almost too good to be true for me, but I am a believer in Bitcoin and what it's trying to do. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist in the sense that I think Bitcoin is going to be and is the best digital gold form of it. Alternative store of value to the fiat systems. It combats it. But I'm not a maximalist. I think these people that are Bitcoin maximalists, they've kind of really shot themselves in the foot because the broader distributed ledgers are going to be the underlying infrastructure that runs tomorrow's world. And there is far more application for a distributed ledger than just an alternative form of money. And Bitcoin practically couldn't even be an alternative form of money because of its scalability issues. And you can add layer 2s on them, but you're adding all these problems. When these Bitcoin maximalists say that, okay, well, institutions are involved. And these are the same people that are going crazy and over the moon about institutions buying Bitcoin and actually now becoming some of the largest owners of Bitcoin. And actually, we already know that BlackRock is one of the largest owners of some of the biggest actual Bitcoin miners out there. And they'll be very proud of that. But then, so people pick and choose. But I just wanted to get the video out there, just really sort of showcasing Hedera's Governing Council. It's an amazing feature that it has. It's really well thought out. And actually, Hedera is definitely decentralized, certainly in regards to the aspects that we've looked at compared to other blockchains. Don't just believe me on this. As always, we say to you guys, go and do your own research and come back to me. On that note, I'm going to love and leave you. Always a pleasure. Really enjoyed delivering this one and looking forward to seeing you all in the next one. Thanks all for watching. See you soon.